The silence in the first-class cabin was deafening. 50 passengers watched in horror as Captain Marcus Sterling pointed a trembling finger at the aisle, his face twisted in a sneer. "I don't care who you think you are," he spat at the woman sitting quietly in seat 1A. "My plane, my rules. Someone like you doesn't belong in a seat worth $20,000. Get to the back or get off." The woman, Dr. Olivia Rose, didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply adjusted her hoodie, picked up her bag, and whispered 3 words that would eventually cost him everything. "You'll regret this." He thought he was humiliated, a nobody. He had no idea he just declared war on the owner of the airline. The rain at JFK International Airport was relentless, hammering against the fuselage of the Boeing 777-300ER like handfuls of gravel. Inside the cabin of Vanguardia Airways Flight 902, bound for London Heathrow, the atmosphere was usually one of hushed reverence. This was the flagship route, the Golden Corridor, frequented by Wall Street titans, tech moguls, and old money inheritors. Dr. Olivia Rose sat in seat 1A, the most coveted spot on the aircraft. To the casual observer, Olivia looked nothing like the typical clientele of Vanguardia's Diamond Suite class. She wore a pair of slightly worn grey sweatpants, oversized vintage sneakers, and a charcoal hoodie with the hood pulled up to shield her eyes from the harsh LED cabin lighting. She had no designer luggage visible, just a battered leather rucksack tucked into the side compartment. She was exhausted. It had been a 72-hour marathon of negotiations in a windowless boardroom in downtown Manhattan. The deal she had just closed wasn't just big. It was historic. Olivia had finalized the quiet acquisition of the struggling Vanguardia Aviation Group. Technically, as of 3 hours ago, she owned the seat she was sitting in. She owned the silverware on the tray table. She owned the fuel in the wings. But nobody knew that yet. The press release wasn't scheduled to drop until the markets opened on Monday morning. To the crew of Flight 902, she was just a name on a manifest, a last-minute addition that had raised eyebrows at the gate. "Champagne, ma'am?" Olivia looked up. A flight attendant named Chloe stood there, holding a bottle of Dom Perignon. Chloe looked nervous, her smile tight. She was young, perhaps new to the diamond cabin. "Just water, please. Sparkling if you have it," Olivia said, her voice raspy from days of talking. "Of course." As Chloe turned to fetch the water, the cockpit door opened. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted instantly. It was a subtle change in pressure, the way the air changes before a thunderstorm. Captain Marcus Sterling emerged. Sterling was a legend in his own mind. At 55, he possessed a silver mane of hair, a jawline that looked like it had been chiseled from granite, and an ego that barely fit through the reinforced cockpit door. He was Vanguardia's senior-most pilot, the face of their marketing campaigns, and a man who believed the golden age of aviation meant the era when pilots were gods and passengers were silent subjects. He adjusted his cap, his eyes scanning the first-class cabin with a practiced, critical gaze. He was looking for imperfections, a napkin out of place, a shade not fully raised. His eyes glided over the hedge fund manager in 2A, gave a nod to the famous actress in 1F, and then stopped abruptly at seat 1A. His brow furrowed. He blinked, as if trying to clear a smudge from his vision. Olivia was staring out the window, watching the ground crew load luggage. She sensed the looming presence and turned her head. Sterling didn't speak immediately. He walked over to Chloe, who was pouring Olivia's water at the galley station. "Who is that?" Sterling asked, his voice a low rumble, audible only to the crew but carrying the weight of an interrogation. "That's Miss Rose, Captain," Chloe whispered. "She was a late addition. Gate agent printed the ticket manually." Sterling narrowed his eyes, looking back at Olivia. She's in 1A. That's the chairman's seat. It's reserved for full fare royalty or company VIPs. The manifest says she's priority status, Chloe said, checking her tablet. Priority? Sterling scoffed. He looked Olivia up and down. The hoodie, the lack of jewellery, the dark skin, the exhaustion that he interpreted as a hangover or drug come-down. She looks like she snuck in from the cleaning crew. There's been a mistake. Captain, her ticket is valid. Systems glitch, Sterling interrupted, his voice rising. I know the glitch. It happens when the system overbooks economy and auto-upgrades based on frequent flyer algorithm errors. Look at her, Chloe. Does she look like she just dropped 20 grand on a ticket? She's probably a student or some influencer who used miles. I can ask her. No, Sterling said, straightening his jacket. I'll handle it. We have Mr. Julian Thorne coming on board in 10 minutes. He's currently on standby for first because of the overbooking. His father is Senator Thorne. I'm not having a senator's son sit in business while a glitch in a hoodie sits in the flagship suite. Sterling marched down the aisle. The heavy tread of his boots on the plush carpet announced his arrival. He stopped directly in front of Olivia's pod. Olivia felt the shadow fall over her. She pulled her headphones down around her neck and looked up. Can I help you? Ticket, Sterling said. No greeting, no good evening, just a command. Olivia paused. She was too tired for this. Excuse me? I need to see your boarding pass. Now. Olivia sighed, reaching into her pocket. She pulled out the thermal paper slip and handed it to him. Sterling snatched it, staring at it with theatrical suspicion. He held it up to the light, then scoffed. As I thought, Sterling said, handing it back with 2 fingers as if it were contaminated. This is an operational error. I assure you it's not, Olivia said calmly. I paid for this seat. Sterling let out a short, derisive laugh that caused several other passengers to look up. You paid? For a diamond suite? Listen, miss, I don't know what game you're playing or whose miles you stole, but we need to clear this seat. Clear the seat? Olivia sat up straighter. The exhaustion in her eyes was being replaced by a sharp, cold intelligence. On what grounds? On the grounds that this is a premium cabin for Vanguardia's most distinguished guests, Sterling said, his voice raising just enough so the surrounding passengers could hear. He was performing now. We have a dress code, we have conduct standards, and quite frankly, we have a paying VIP who actually belongs here, waiting at the gate. I am a paying VIP, Olivia said, her voice steady. And as for your dress code, I checked the fine print. There is no dress code for paying customers, only for non-revenue staff travelers. I am not staff. Sterling's face flushed a shade of red. He wasn't used to being contradicted, certainly not by women, and definitely not by women who looked like Olivia. He leaned in, invading her personal space. Listen to me, he hissed. I am the captain of this aircraft. My word is law. Under FAA regulations, I can remove any passenger who I deem a distraction or a security risk. Right now, your attitude is a distraction. My attitude? Olivia asked, raising an eyebrow. I'm sitting quietly and drinking water. You are the one making a scene. Captain Sterling. She read his name tag with deliberate slowness. I'm going to give you one choice, Sterling said, straightening up and booming his voice for the whole cabin. You grab that bag of yours and you move to seat 42B in economy. It's the middle seat, back row. Or I call Port Authority Police. Have you dragged off this plane and banned from this airline for life? The cabin went silent. The hedge fund manager in 2A put down his Wall Street Journal. The actress in 1F lowered her sunglasses. Everyone was watching. Olivia looked at Sterling. She saw the arrogance, the deep-seated bias masked as authority. She knew she could end this right now. She could pull out her phone, call the chairman of the board, who was currently terrified of her, and have Sterling fired before the engines even started. But then she looked at the other passengers. She saw the way they were looking at her, some with pity, but many with the same suspicion Sterling had. Does she belong here? Is she a fraud? If she played the "Do you know who I am?" card now, it would look like a tantrum. It would be messy, and frankly, it wouldn't teach Marcus Sterling a thing. He needed to learn a lesson that would burn. Olivia took a deep breath. She picked up her phone and sent a single text message to her chief legal officer, David. Initiate Protocol 0. Track flight VA902. Don't intervene yet. Just watch. She stood up. She was tall, almost eye level with Sterling. You're making a mistake, Captain, Olivia said softly. The only mistake was letting you board, Sterling countered, smirking. Move, now. Olivia grabbed her rucksack. She didn't look at the floor. She held her head high. As she stepped out of the suite, she looked Sterling dead in the eyes. I'll take seat 42B, she said. But remember this moment, Marcus. You're going to wish you had just let me drink my water. Threatening a flight crew member? Sterling laughed, turning to the passengers as if seeking applause. Folks, this is why we have standards. Sarah, escort her to the back, and make sure she doesn't steal any amenities on the way down. Olivia walked down the long aisle. It was a walk of shame that lasted forever. She passed through the business-class cabin, where people whispered behind their hands. She passed through premium economy. Finally, she reached the back of the plane, the cramped, noisy section near the toilets. Seat 42B was exactly as promised, a middle seat between a man eating a tuna sandwich and a woman with a crying infant. As she squeezed into the seat, her knees pressing against the plastic tray in front of her, the intercom crackled to life. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Sterling from the flight deck. Apologies for the slight delay. We had to sort out a seating discrepancy to ensure the comfort of our premium guests. We'll be pushing back shortly. Olivia buckled her seatbelt. She closed her eyes and visualized the organizational chart of Vanguardia Aviation. She visualized Sterling's name at the top of the pilot roster, and then, in her mind, she visualized a red line crossing it out. Excuse me, the man with the tuna sandwich mumbled, chewing with his mouth open. You in the right seat? You look like you came from up front. I did, Olivia said, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. But the captain insisted I get a better view of how he runs his airline. Trust me, it's going to be a very interesting flight. Just then, at the front of the plane, the real VIP boarded. Julian Thorne, a 20-something with slicked-back hair and a loud designer suit, high-fived Captain Sterling before dropping his bag into the seat Olivia had just vacated. The cabin doors closed. The trap was set. The seatbelt sign dinged off, but the tension in the air remained thick, like humidity before a storm. In seat 42B, Dr. Olivia Rose shifted her weight, trying to find a millimeter of relief. The economy seat was designed for a human frame, significantly smaller than the average modern adult. To her left, Mr. Henderson, the man with the tuna sandwich, was a sweet, elderly retiree from Wisconsin who clearly had no concept of personal boundaries. His elbow was currently digging into Olivia's ribcage as he struggled to open a bag of pretzels. Sorry about that, Henderson mumbled, crumbs tumbling onto his shirt. They make these seats smaller every year, don't they? I remember back in the 90s, Vanguardia used to be the best. Now, it's a cattle car. It certainly feels that way, Olivia replied softly, pulling her laptop out of her rucksack. She opened the lid, the screen illuminating her face in the dim cabin. She wasn't working on a spreadsheet. She was logging into Vanguardia's internal crew network. As the new owner, Olivia had been given a skeleton key digital access code by the IT auditors during the due diligence phase 3 days ago. It allowed her to view real-time operational data, fuel loads, maintenance logs, passenger manifests, and, crucially, crew personnel files. She connected to the onboard Wi-Fi, paying the $25 fee with a grimace. $25 for slow internet on a plane I own, she thought. First change on the list. She typed in Captain Marcus Sterling's ID number. His file popped up. Name, Marcus Sterling. Rank, Senior Captain, Czech Airman. Tenure, 28 years. Performance rating, excellent. Technical. HR notes. 3 prior complaints regarding interaction with ground staff. Dismissed as personality conflicts. Protected status due to union seniority. Personality conflicts, Olivia whispered to herself. Corporate speak for, he's a bully, but he makes us money. Meanwhile, at the front of the plane, a very different scene was unfolding. Julian Thorne, the man who had taken Olivia's seat, was treating the Diamond Suite like his personal frat house. He had reclined the seat fully, kicked off his loafers, and placed his socked feet up on the bulkhead wall, leaving a smudge on the pristine white leather. Hey, you! Sweetheart! Julian snapped his fingers. He didn't use the call button, he just yelled. Chloe, the young flight attendant who had tried to defend Olivia earlier, rushed over. She looked frazzled. Yes, Mr. Thorne, how can I help you? This champagne, Julian said, gesturing to a half-empty flute of Krug. It's warm. I don't do warm bubbles. Take it away. Bring me another bottle, and make sure it's actually chilled this time. I'm sorry, sir, Chloe said, her voice trembling slightly. We only load 3 bottles of the Krug for this flight. That was the second one. If I open the third... Did I ask you about your inventory management? Julian interrupted, picking up his phone and scrolling through Instagram without looking at her. I asked for cold champagne. If you run out, go raid the business class galley. Figure it out. That's what you're paid for, isn't it? Chloe swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Right away. From the flight deck, Captain Sterling emerged again. He was doing his courtesy walk, usually a time for the captain to greet the high-value passengers and ensure they were happy. Sterling bypassed the elderly couple in 2C and 2D and went straight to Julian. Mr. Thorne, Sterling said, his voice dripping with syrup. Captain Sterling, just wanted to personally welcome you aboard. I know your father well. The senator is a great advocate for the aviation industry. Julian looked up, barely acknowledging the captain. Yeah, great. Hey, Captain, your stewardess is giving me grief about the champagne. Can you tell her to speed it up? Sterling didn't even ask for context. He turned to Chloe, who was returning with an ice bucket. Chloe, Sterling barked. Mr. Thorne is our priority. Whatever he wants, he gets. Don't ration the service. If you have to pull from the reserve stock, do it. Do I make myself clear? But Captain, Chloe whispered, leaning in so Julian wouldn't hear. He's already had 3 glasses before takeoff. He's being very aggressive. Sterling's eyes went cold. He grabbed Chloe by the upper arm, gently enough to not leave a bruise, but firm enough to be a threat. He pulled her toward the galley. Listen to me, Sterling hissed. I already had a disaster with that woman in 1A. I had to move her to get this guy on board. If he complains, I look bad. And if I look bad, you lose your job. Do not cross me on this. Chloe nodded, tears pricking the corners of her eyes. Yes, Captain. Back in economy, the atmosphere was deteriorating. The baby in 43C had been crying for 40 minutes straight. The air conditioning in the rear section seemed to be malfunctioning. It was stiflingly hot. Olivia was observing everything. She wasn't just a passenger anymore, she was an auditor. She noted the broken latch on the overhead bin in row 38. She noted the frayed carpet in the aisle. She noted that the flight attendants in economy were exhausted, running back and forth with water cups because the airline had cut staffing levels to save money. This is what Sterling doesn't see, Olivia thought. He thinks the airline is the champagne in row 1. He doesn't realize the airline is actually the 300 people back here holding the whole thing up. "You okay, miss?" Mr. Henderson asked. He noticed Olivia staring intensely at her laptop screen. "You look like you're planning an invasion." Olivia cracked a small smile. "Something like that, Mr. Henderson. Just doing some research on management structures." "Well, don't work too hard," Henderson chuckled. "Hey, you want half this sandwich? I think they forgot to load the meals." Olivia's heart broke a little. Here was a man who paid for a ticket, squeezed into a tiny seat, ignored by the crew, offering to share his meager food. "No thank you, Mr. Henderson," Olivia said, "but I promise you, the meal service will improve. Very soon." Just then, a commotion erupted from the front of the plane. It started as a raised voice, then the sound of glass shattering. Olivia closed her laptop instantly. Her instincts, honed not just in boardrooms but in the difficult neighborhoods where she grew up, went on high alert. She stood up. "Sit down, ma'am. The seatbelt sign is—" a passing flight attendant started to say, but Olivia ignored her. She stepped into the aisle, looking toward the heavy curtain that separated the classes. She could hear Julian Thorne's voice, slurred and angry. "Don't you touch me! I said don't touch me!" And then, a woman's scream. The scream cut through the drone of the jet engines like a knife. It wasn't a scream of terror, but of shock and humiliation. Olivia didn't walk, she marched. She moved with a fluidity and speed that startled the economy passengers. She pushed through the curtain into premium economy, then through the galley into business. "Ma'am, you can't go up there!" a male flight attendant shouted, chasing after her. Olivia ignored him. She reached the heavy velvet curtain, separating business from first class, and ripped it aside. The scene in the Diamond Suite was chaotic. Julian Thorne was standing up, swaying unsteadily. A bottle of red wine lay shattered on the floor, the crimson liquid soaking into the beige carpet like a fresh wound. Chloe was backed against the galley wall, clutching her chest. Her uniform blouse was soaked in wine. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. "You stupid girl!" Julian was yelling. "I told you to take the glass, not grab my hand." Captain Sterling was there, having rushed out of the cockpit again. But instead of restraining the drunk, aggressive passenger, he was standing between Julian and Chloe, facing his own crew member. "Chloe, get into the galley and clean yourself up," Sterling barked, his voice tight with panic. He turned to Julian, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Mr. Thorne, please, sit down. It was an accident. She's clumsy. We'll get this cleaned up." "She touched me," Julian slurred, pointing a finger at the crying girl. "She tried to cut me off. Who does she think she is? My father will have this whole airline shut down." "Nobody is shutting anything down," Sterling soothed, desperate to keep the peace with the VIP. "I'll handle her. I'll write her up personally. Please, Julian, have a seat. Let me get you a fresh glass." Olivia felt a rage burn in her chest that was hotter than anything she had felt in years. This wasn't just bad management. This was enabling abuse. She stepped into the first-class cabin. "He's drunk, Captain," Olivia said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it projected with the clarity of a judge reading a verdict. "And he just assaulted your crew member." Sterling spun around. When he saw Olivia, the woman in the hoodie from seat 42B, his face turned a violent shade of purple. "You!" Sterling snarled. "I told you to stay in your seat. What the hell are you doing in my cabin?" "I heard a scream," Olivia said, stepping over the broken glass, ignoring the wine that stained her sneakers. She moved toward Chloe, positioning herself between the flight attendant and the men. "Are you okay?" she asked Chloe gently. Chloe couldn't speak. She just nodded, sobbing. "She's fine," Sterling shouted. "Get back to economy. You are violating federal aviation regulations by interfering with a flight crew during an incident." "The incident," Olivia said, turning to face Sterling, "is that you have an intoxicated passenger who is a danger to this aircraft, and instead of restraining him, you're offering him more alcohol." Julian Thorne laughed, a wet, ugly sound. He looked at Olivia with blurry eyes. "Who's this? The cleaning lady coming to mop up the wine? Hey, honey, while you're down there, polish my shoes." Olivia didn't flinch. She looked at Julian with cold detachment. "Sit down, Mr. Thorne, before you commit a felony." "Felony?" Julian cackled. He took a step toward Olivia, invading her space. "Do you know who I am? I'm Julian Thorne. I can buy you. I can buy your family." He reached out to shove Olivia's shoulder. It was a mistake. Olivia had a black belt in Krav Maga, a hobby she picked up to manage the stress of corporate takeovers. As Julian's hand came toward her, she didn't strike him. She simply deflected his arm with a sharp, precise block, stepped to the side, and let his own momentum carry him forward. Julian stumbled, tripping over his own feet, and collapsed into seat 1A. "Don't touch me," Olivia said. Sterling lost it. He saw his VIP humiliated by the economy trash. "That is it," Sterling roared. "I am diverting this plane. We are landing in Gander. And you," he pointed a trembling finger inches from Olivia's nose, "you are going to prison, assaulting a passenger, disobeying crew instructions, interfering with flight operations. I will make sure you never fly again. I will ruin you." Olivia looked at the finger pointing at her face. She looked at Chloe, shivering in the corner. She looked at Julian, who was now trying to stand up, muttering threats. She realized the game was over. She couldn't wait for London. If Sterling diverted the plane now, it would cost the airline hundreds of thousands of dollars and inconvenience 300 innocent people just to satisfy his ego. She had to drop the hammer. Now. "You're going to divert the plane, Marcus?" Olivia asked, her voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly serious. "You're going to explain to the board of directors why you performed an emergency landing because you couldn't manage one drunk boy?" "I don't answer to the board for safety decisions," Sterling yelled. "I am the god of this plane while we are in the air. Now get on your knees and put your hands behind your head. I'm placing you under citizen's arrest until we land." He reached for the zip ties in the emergency kit on the wall. Olivia didn't move. She didn't get on her knees. She reached into her hoodie pocket. "Drop the bag," Sterling screamed, thinking she was reaching for a weapon. "Drop it!" Olivia pulled out a small black leather wallet. She flipped it open. Inside wasn't a police badge, but something far rarer. It was a heavy titanium card with the Vanguardia logo embossed in gold and a separate ID card with a holographic strip. "I'm not dropping anything, Captain," Olivia said. She held the ID up. "My name is Dr. Olivia Rose. I am the CEO of Rose Capital." Sterling paused, the zip ties dangling from his hand. "I don't care if you're the Queen of England. You're in economy." "Rose Capital?" Olivia continued, her voice rising so the passengers in business class could hear. "Completed the acquisition of Vanguardia Airways 72 hours ago." The silence that followed was absolute. The drone of the engine seemed to vanish. Sterling blinked. "What?" "I bought the airline, Marcus," Olivia said, stepping closer to him until she was the one invading his space. "I own this plane. I own that seat. I own the fuel. And I own your contract." She pulled out her phone, which was still connected to the Wi-Fi. She tapped the screen and turned it around to show him. It was a digital copy of the transfer of ownership deed, signed and time-stamped. "Now," Olivia said, her eyes blazing, "I am relieving you of command." Sterling stared at the phone. He stared at her. His brain was trying to process the impossible shift in reality. The woman in the hoodie. The woman he sent to the back. The woman he threatened to arrest. You can't," Sterling stammered, his face draining of color. "You can't relieve me. I'm the pilot in command." "Actually, I can," Olivia said. "Under Company Bylaw Section 14, Article 3. In the event of the captain's incapacitation or gross negligence bordering on insanity, the senior corporate officer present may order the relief of command to the first officer." She looked past Sterling, toward the open cockpit door where the first officer, a young man named David, was watching with wide eyes. "First officer," Olivia called out. Yes, ma'am," David squeaked. "Is this aircraft capable of flying safely to London under your command?" "Yes, ma'am, I'm fully rated." "Good," Olivia said. She turned back to Sterling. "Get out of my cockpit." Sterling didn't move. He was frozen, his ego fighting a losing battle with reality. This is a prank. You're lying." "Check the flight manifest again, Marcus," Olivia said coldly. "Look at the code next to my name. It doesn't say priority. It says O1, Owner 1. Sterling looked at the flight attendant's tablet lying on the counter. He snatched it up. He scrolled to 42B. There it was. "Rose, Olivia. Status, O1. Chairman." The tablet slipped from his numb fingers and clattered onto the floor. Sterling started, his voice a whisper. "I didn't know." "That," Olivia said, "is exactly the problem." She pointed to seat 1A, where Julian Thorne was now sitting in stunned silence, realizing his ally had just been nuked. "Mr. Thorne," Olivia said, "you are going to be restrained for the remainder of this flight. If you say one word, I will have the London police waiting at the gate to charge you with assault. Nod if you understand." Julian nodded, terrified. Olivia turned back to Sterling. The hard karma was about to hit, and she wasn't going to be gentle. "Captain Sterling," she said, "take seat 42B. It's a middle seat. I hear the view is terrible." The walk from the front of the aircraft to the rear is approximately 55 meters on a Boeing 777-300ER. For Captain Marcus Sterling, it felt like walking the length of the Great Wall of China in shackles. He still wore his uniform, the double-breasted blazer with the gold wings, the 4 stripes on the epaulets signifying his rank as commander. But as he moved past the rows of business class, the uniform no longer felt like armor. It felt like a costume, a clown suit. The passengers who had witnessed the altercation in first class were whispering. Heads turned. A young man in 4C held up his phone, recording Sterling's descent. Sterling wanted to slap the phone away, to bark an order, to assert the dominance he had wielded for 30 years. But he couldn't. The image of Olivia Rose's ID card and the cold, absolute authority in her eyes had severed the connection between his brain and his ego. He was in shock. He crossed the galley into the economy cabin. The air here was different. It was heavier, warmer, smelling of stale coffee and humanity. He reached row 42. "Well, look who it is," Mr. Henderson said, looking up from his crossword puzzle. The elderly man didn't know Sterling was the captain. He just saw a man in a pilot's uniform looking lost. "Did you get lost on the way to the bathroom, son?" Sterling didn't answer. He stared at seat 42B, the middle seat, the seat he had forced the owner of the airline into. "Sit down, Marcus," came a voice over the intercom. It wasn't the standard flight attendant announcement. It was Olivia, speaking from the flight deck handset. Her voice was calm, professional, and heard by every soul on board. "Cabin crew, please prepare for immediate departure. We are 50 minutes behind schedule due to operational inefficiencies. Sterling squeezed into the seat. He was a large man, 6'2", broad-shouldered. The seat pitch was 31 inches. His knees jammed instantly into the hard plastic back of seat 41B. The armrests were down. To his left, Mr. Henderson's elbows were veritable weapons. To his right, the mother with the infant looked at him with exhaustion. "Can you hold this?" she asked, thrusting a dirty burp cloth at him while she tried to adjust the baby's pacifier. Sterling looked at the cloth in his hand. It was warm and damp. I am the captain," he whispered, more to himself than her. "That's nice," the woman said, not looking up. "If you're the captain, fix the air conditioning. It's sweating back here." The plane pushed back. The safety video played. Sterling sat there, his 4 stripes gleaming in the dim light, trapped in the hell he had created for his customers. Up in the Diamond Suite, the atmosphere had transformed. Olivia didn't return to the luxury of seat 1A immediately. She remained in the galley with Chloe. The young flight attendant had cleaned the wine off her face, but her hands were still shaking. "I'm going to be fired," Chloe whispered, staring at the floor. "Sterling writes the rosters. He knows the union reps. He'll say I provoked the passenger. He always does." Olivia poured a glass of water from a plastic bottle, not crystal, and handed it to her. "Chloe, look at me." The girl looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "Marcus Sterling doesn't write the rosters anymore," Olivia said firmly. "And he doesn't control your future. I do. And do you know what I saw today?" Chloe shook her head. "I saw a crew member trying to follow safety protocols regarding alcohol service while being intimidated by her superior," Olivia said. "You did exactly what you were trained to do. You stood your ground. That is the kind of backbone I need in this company." She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. It was thick, black cardstock with gold embossing. "When we land in London, you are going off duty. I'm putting you up in the crew hotel for 3 days. Paid leave. I want you to write a full report of everything Sterling has said or done to you, or any other crew member, in the last year. Can you do that?" Chloe nodded, a fresh tear slipping down her cheek. "Yes, Mum. Thank you." "Don't thank me," Olivia said, her eyes hardening as she looked toward the back of the plane. "Just help me clean house." Olivia walked back to seat 1A. Julian Thorne was still there, strapped in with the heavy sash seatbelt. His hands were zip-tied loosely, not enough to cut circulation, but enough to prevent movement. He was sober now, or getting there, and the reality of his situation was setting in. He looked at Olivia with the eyes of a trapped animal. "My father is Senator Thorne," he mumbled. "He sits on the Transportation Committee. You can't do this." Olivia sat in 1F, across the aisle from him, swiveling her chair to face him. She didn't look angry. She looked disappointed. "Julian," she said softly, "do you know how much fuel a Boeing 777 burns per hour?" He blinked, confused by the question. "What?" "About 7.5 tons, Olivia answered herself. "It costs thousands of dollars just to taxi to the runway. I operate a business of thin margins and high risks. I don't have time for politicians' sons who think the rules of physics and federal law don't apply to them because of their last name." She leaned forward. "Your father is a smart man. I've met him. Do you think he's going to launch a federal inquiry into why his drunk son was restrained after assaulting a flight attendant? Or do you think he's going to be very, very quiet to make sure the video of you screaming at a crying girl doesn't leak to TMZ?" Julian went pale. "I have the cabin security footage, Julian," Olivia bluffed. The plane didn't have cabin cameras, but Julian didn't know that. "So, for the next 6 hours, You are going to sit there. You are not going to speak. You are not going to ask for water. You are going to think about how you're going to apologize to Chloe. Because if that apology isn't sincere, the video goes to the press before we even clear customs. Julian slumped back in his seat, defeated. Back in 42B, 5 hours into the flight, Marcus Sterling was in agony. His legs had gone numb. The man in front of him had reclined his seat fully, meaning the tray table was digging into Sterling's stomach. He couldn't open his laptop. He couldn't sleep. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the psychological torture. He knew the procedures. He knew that right now, up in the cockpit, First Officer David, a kid Sterling had mocked just yesterday for being too soft, was managing the fuel flow. David was talking to Gander Control. David was doing his job. Sterling closed his eyes and tried to imagine a way out. Maybe he could claim medical emergency? No, there were doctors on board, and if they found nothing, it was fraud. Maybe he could claim Olivia was an imposter? No, the idea was genuine. He had seen the hologram. He realized with a sinking feeling in his gut that he had built a career on fear. He ruled his crew by fear. He intimidated ground staff. He bullied ATC. He had assumed that because he could land a 300-ton metal bird in a crosswind, he was untouchable. He looked at Mr. Henderson next to him. The old man was sleeping, his mouth open, a small line of drool on his chin. This is who I serve, Sterling thought. Not the billionaires in row 1. These people, the ones who save for years to buy a ticket. For the first time in 20 years, Marcus Sterling looked at the economy cabin not as cattle class, but as a container of human beings he had failed. Then, the turbulence hit. It wasn't just a bump, it was clear air turbulence, sudden and violent. The plane dropped 300 feet in a second. Screams erupted from the back of the plane. The overhead bins rattled like machine gun fire. Sterling's instinct kicked in. His hand shot up to grab a yoke that wasn't there. He looked toward the front, his heart hammering. David! He's never flown through severe cat over the Atlantic. Sterling unbuckled. He had to go help. He had to save the plane. He stood up, bracing himself against the ceiling as the plane bucked again. "Sit down!" a voice yelled. It wasn't a flight attendant. It was Olivia. She had walked back during the turbulence, holding onto the overhead rails with practiced ease. She stood in the aisle, looking at him. "I need to go to the flight deck," Sterling shouted over the noise of the rattling cabin. "David isn't ready for this. He needs me." "David is fine," Olivia said calmly, her voice steady despite the shaking floor. "He's flying the aircraft. You are a passenger. Sit down and fasten your seatbelt." "You don't understand," Sterling pleaded, his arrogance gone, replaced by genuine aviator's anxiety. "This is severe chop. If he overcorrects—" "He won't," Olivia interrupted, "because unlike you, he listens to his instruments, not his ego. Sit. Down." The plane lurched one last time, then stabilized. The hum of the engines smoothed out. "Ladies and gentlemen," David's voice came over the intercom, sounding calm, confident, and decidedly unlike the timid boy Sterling knew. "Apologies for the rough air. We hit a pocket of clear air turbulence. We've descended to flight level 330 to find smoother air. We should be smooth sailing to London. Thank you for your patience." Sterling sank back into seat 42B. David hadn't panicked. He hadn't overcorrected. He had done exactly what he was supposed to do. Sterling realized then that he wasn't essential. The airline didn't need him. The plane didn't need him. He was obsolete. The descent into London Heathrow was grey and rainy, typical British weather to match Sterling's mood. From his tiny window portal in row 42, Sterling watched the flaps extend. He critiqued the timing. Too early, too much drag. But it was a hollow criticism. He felt the gear drop with a heavy thud. The landing was butter. A greaser. The kind of landing pilots dream of, where you can't feel the wheels touch the tarmac until the reverse thrusters roar. "Nice landing!" Mr. Henderson clapped his hands. "Better than the last flight I took." Sterling ground his teeth. As the plane taxied to Terminal 3, the ding of the seatbelt sign turning off sounded like a funeral bell. The chaotic rush of deboarding began. Usually, Sterling would be standing at the cockpit door, chest puffed out, accepting the thanks of the departing passengers. "Great flight, Cap." "Smooth ride, Cap." Today, he had to wait. He had to wait for the people in row 43 to get their bags. He had to wait for the slow shuffle of 300 tired travelers. He finally reached the front of the plane. The business class cabin was empty. The Diamond Suite was empty. But standing by the aircraft door, blocking the exit, were 3 figures. Dr. Olivia Rose, 2 officers from the London Metropolitan Police, and a severe-looking woman in a suit holding a clipboard. Olivia looked fresh, despite the flight. She had changed out of her hoodie into a sharp black blazer she must have had in her carry-on. She looked like the owner now. "Captain Sterling," Olivia said. She didn't offer her hand. "Ms. Rose," Sterling said, clutching his flight bag. He looked at the police. Am I under arrest?" "No," Olivia said. "The officers are here for Mr. Thorne. He's currently being escorted to a holding cell for assault on a crew member. We are pressing full charges." Sterling swallowed. She had actually done it. She had thrown the senator's son to the wolves. "And who is this?" Sterling asked, nodding at the woman with the clipboard. "This is Miss Gable," Olivia said. "She is the Vanguardia station manager for London Heathrow. She's here to collect your credentials." My credentials?" "Your ID badge, your airport security clearance, your company tablet, and your uniform keys." Olivia listed them off without emotion. "You're firing me?" Sterling asked. The words tasted like ash. "Right here, on the jet bridge, after 28 years?" "I'm not firing you, Marcus," Olivia said. "Firing you would entitle you to a severance package and a union hearing. I am placing you on indefinite unpaid administrative leave pending a formal investigation into gross misconduct, endangerment of flight operations, and violation of the company's code of ethics." She stepped closer. "The investigation will include interviews with every crew member you've flown with in the last 5 years. We're going to open the personality conflicts file. We're going to look at the fuel logs. We're going to look at everything." Sterling felt his knees weaken. That will take months. Years. "Then you better get comfortable," Olivia said. "Because while that investigation is ongoing, you are barred from all Vanguardia property. You are barred from flying our aircraft. And since I'm going to flag your file in the International Pilot Database as under investigation for safety violations, you won't be flying for anyone else, either." Ms. Gable stepped forward, hand extended. "Badge, Captain. Please." Sterling looked at the badge clipped to his chest. The photo was 10 years old, showing a younger, more arrogant man. He unclipped it. He handed over his tablet. "And the epaulets," Olivia said. Sterling froze. "Excuse me?" "The stripes," Olivia said, pointing to his shoulders. "You are no longer a captain of this airline. Take them off. You don't wear them off this plane." It was the ultimate humiliation. To walk through the terminal in a pilot's shirt with empty loops on the shoulders. It signaled to everyone in the aviation world that he had been stripped of rank. Trembling, Marcus Sterling reached up. He unbuttoned the black fabric slides with the 4 gold stripes. He held them in his hand for a moment, 30 years of climbing the ladder, 30 years of ego, and then dropped them into Ms. Gable's plastic bag. "You can retrieve your personal luggage at Carousel 4, Olivia said, checking her watch. "It will be coming out last. Priority tags don't apply to suspended staff." Olivia turned her back on him. She walked toward the cockpit, where David was finishing his post-flight checklist. "David," she called out, her voice warm and bright. "Yes, Ms. Rose?" "Excellent landing, truly. How would you like to be the acting chief pilot for the fleet modernization program? I need someone who knows how to fly the plane, not just bark orders." Sterling heard this as he was ushered off the jet bridge. He walked into the cold, fluorescent light of Heathrow Terminal 3. He was just a man in a white shirt and black pants, dragging a bag, invisible to the world. But Olivia wasn't done. The hard karma was personal, but the business karma was just beginning. Sterling thought he had lost his job. He was about to find out he was going to lose his reputation, his fortune, and his freedom. Because Olivia Rose didn't just want him gone. She wanted to make him an example. Marcus Sterling didn't go quietly. For 3 weeks following the incident, he sat in his expansive Connecticut home, drinking scotch and plotting his revenge. He believed the law was on his side. He had a contract. He had a union. He had 30 years of unblemished technical flight records. He hired a shark of a lawyer, Arthur P. Reynolds, and filed a lawsuit against Vanguardia Airways and Dr. Olivia Rose personally. The suit claimed wrongful termination, defamation of character, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. He demanded $15 million in damages and immediate reinstatement. It was a bold move. It was also a suicidal one. Sterling assumed the security footage Olivia mentioned on the plane was a bluff. He knew the 777-300ER didn't have cabin cameras. He thought it was his word against hers. But he forgot about the passengers. 2 days before the preliminary hearing, a video surfaced on TikTok. It had been recorded by the teenager in seat 4C. The angle was perfect. It showed Julian Thorne screaming at Chloe. It showed Sterling blocking Chloe's path, protecting the abuser. It showed Olivia stepping in calmly. And most damning of all, it captured clear audio of Sterling sneering. "Someone like you doesn't belong in a seat worth $20,000. The video, titled "The Pilot, the Brat, and the Boss," hit 45 million views in 48 hours. The internet did what the internet does best. They doxed Julian Thorne, forcing his senator father to issue a public apology and resign from the Transportation Committee to focus on his family. Julian was quietly shipped off to a rehabilitation facility in Switzerland to avoid the paparazzi. But the vitriol for Sterling was worse. The hashtag #FireCaptainSterling trended globally. Former crew members, emboldened by the video, started coming forward. Stories flooded Twitter. Flight attendants he had made cry, co-pilots he had belittled, gate agents he had cursed at. The personality conflicts file Olivia had found was suddenly being corroborated by hundreds of real voices. The day of the hearing arrived. Sterling walked into the deposition room, confident, ignoring the protesters outside. He sat across from Olivia, who looked bored. "My client," Arthur Reynolds blustered, "was acting in the interest of de-escalating a volatile situation. Ms. Rose's interference was the true safety hazard." Olivia didn't speak. She simply slid a single piece of paper across the mahogany table. "What is this?" Reynolds asked. "That," Olivia said, "is the morality clause in Captain Sterling's pension agreement. It states that any employee found to have caused irreparable reputational damage to the airline forfeits their company-matched retirement benefits." Sterling went pale. "You can't touch my pension. That's $3 million. The stock price dropped 4% the day the video leaked, Marcus, Olivia said, her eyes like flint. That's a loss of $80 million in market cap. I'd say the damage is irreparable. She leaned forward. Drop the lawsuit. Resign effective immediately. Surrender your pilot's license voluntarily. If you do, I won't countersue you for the $80 million we lost. If you don't, I will spend every penny of my fortune making sure you end up destitute. Sterling looked at his lawyer. Reynolds closed his folder. Take the deal, Marcus. We can't win this. In that quiet conference room, the ego finally died. Marcus Sterling signed the paper. With a stroke of a pen, he went from a millionaire captain to an unemployed man in his 50s with a shattered reputation and a decimated bank account. 6 months later, Vanguardia Airways had undergone a metamorphosis. The livery was the same, but the soul of the company was unrecognizable. Olivia Rose had instituted a zero-tolerance policy for abuse, both from passengers and crew. She had raised salaries for the ground staff and cabin crew by 15%, funded by cutting the bloated bonuses of middle management. Flight 902 to London was boarding again. In the cockpit sat Captain David, the young first officer who had landed the plane during the crisis. He was now the youngest captain in the fleet, known for his calm demeanor and his respect for his team. In the cabin, Chloe was no longer a junior flight attendant. She was the purser, wearing the gold pin of the cabin service director. She moved through the aisle with confidence, greeting passengers with genuine warmth, knowing that the company had her back. And in seat 42B, the seat was empty. But sitting in seat 1A was not a senator's son or a movie star. It was Mr. Henderson, the elderly man who had shared his sandwich with Olivia. Olivia had sent him a lifetime golden ticket, unlimited first-class travel on Vanguardia for the rest of his life. He was currently sipping Dom Perignon, chilled perfectly, and chatting with the actress in 1F about his grandchildren. As the plane pushed back, a shuttle bus driver on the tarmac paused to let the massive jet pass. The driver was a man with grey hair and a tired face. He wore a neon yellow vest and earned $18 an hour driving passengers from the remote parking lot to the terminal. Marcus Sterling watched the Boeing 777 taxi by. He saw the Vanguardia logo on the tail. He remembered the power of the engines, the view from 35,000 feet, the respect he used to command. Now, he commanded a bus with a broken heater. He watched the plane lift off, soaring into the clouds, leaving him behind on the wet pavement. He had tried to ground the owner of the sky, and in return, the sky had grounded him forever. On board, Olivia Rose sat in seat 42B, working on her laptop. She preferred economy now. It kept her grounded. It reminded her of who really kept the airline flying. She looked out the window as the plane banked over the Atlantic, a small smile touching her lips. Justice wasn't just about punishing the wicked, it was about protecting the good. And as the engines hummed their steady rhythm, she knew the airline was finally in safe hands. The downfall of Captain Marcus Sterling wasn't just about a seating dispute. It was a collision between the old world of unchecked ego and a new era of accountability. Sterling believed his stripes made him superior, failing to recognize that true authority comes from respect, not fear. He judged Olivia by her hoodie, never realizing that the most powerful people often have the least need to show it off. In the end, karma didn't just hit him, it dismantled his life with the precision of a surgeon. He lost his career, his fortune, and his legacy because he couldn't grasp a simple truth. Treating people with dignity costs nothing, but treating them like dirt can cost you everything. The airline flourished not because of a new logo, but because the rot was removed from the cockpit, proving that a company is only as good as the way it treats its lowest-ranking employee. Whatever you do, never judge a book by its cover, especially if that book owns the library. If you enjoyed this story of massive karma and justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Have you ever seen someone let a little bit of power go to their head? Tell me your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next episode of real-life drama and twists. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.